Hey, everybody. My name is Richard Ropiak. I am interim chair of the Economic Development Committee for Community Board 3, and this is the June meeting of that committee. We have not acted as the Economic Development Committee really during the COVID period and during the change that the board has implemented in terms of committees. But the board does have an important role to play, and consequently so does economic development, in the district needs statement that is prepared every year. And together with the district needs statement is a list of budget priorities that the board is required to submit to city. To do that for economic development, we discussed this amongst ourselves, and we would appreciate the input of the business improvement districts that exist within the Community Board 3 area. Susan, Andrea, Susan, and I have fleshed out a list of items that Susan forwarded to you. It's short notice. We understand that. We appreciate that. But whatever input you can give us today, we will try to incorporate into the Community Board's economic development section of the district needs statement. If you are not prepared to respond to all of the items that we sent questions to you, as soon as possible, could you get those remaining items to the Community Board, to Susan, and we'll do our best to incorporate those in it as well. Susan, who should we turn to first?
Well, can I suggest two things? One, to call the roll, and two, to ask new members to introduce themselves.
Okay.
You want me to call on them? I know who they are.
Please.
Okay, I'll start at the top. Angel.
Good evening. My name is Angel Saccarello. I am the Senior Program Director for University Settlement. This is my very first meeting. So I thank you for welcoming me, and I'm excited to see how it goes.
Great. Welcome to the board.
Okay, Michael.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Very nice to meet you all. So my name is Michael Oliverio. I am a senior counsel in the Bureau of Legal Affairs at the New York City Department of Sanitation. And like Angel, this is my first meeting. And so, just looking forward to seeing how it unfolds. And yeah, just happy to be here. Nice to meet everyone.
Excellent. Thank you.
Diane.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm not on camera. I'm also using my phone thanks to the outage. I'm Diane Lake. I'm a longtime resident of the East Village, and I'm a member of a number of volunteer organizations that work in and around there. And I am out visiting all of the different committees as a new member to see which ones I can contribute the most to. So happy to be here.
Welcome, Ms. Lake.
I don't think if there's any other new members, could you raise your Zoom hand? I don't see any.
I see Emma So.
Oh, Emma, yes, I do recognize her name.
Yeah, hi, this is also my first committee meeting. I've lived in the Lower East Side my whole life. I'm 17 and I'm just really excited to get to know all of these committees and to have a say in the community.
Oh.
Welcome, Emma.
Welcome. Anyone else can raise your hand if you're a new member to CB3? I don't see. Oh, yeah. No, Village Alliance is not a new member.
Aha.
I don't know anyone in the committee. Does that count? Because I'm relatively new, but anyway.
You're new to the Alliance, but welcome anyway, if you're not on the board. So Richard, Tim Laughlin offered to go first because he has to put his son to bed.
Oh, no. The joys of time.
Thank you. Yeah, I quickly stuck out to the car
Nice to
to drive away, and thank you for letting me go first. I had Susan's questions up, so Richard, we just want to answer all these questions and just give a general overview.
Sure.
Yeah. Tell which grade you're from.
Sure. So my name is Tim Laughlin. I'm the president of the Lower East Side Partnership. Nina Lashaivo, who's our organization's vice president, chief of staff, is on the line too. Thank you all for having this conversation and for inviting bids to come talk about what we're doing and how the city and the community board can continue to be supportive of that work. Organization is entering its 30th year of operation. Over those 30 years, we've changed quite substantially. And we continue to provide a variety of services to the Lower East Side community and the surrounding area. And so when we talk about what those services are, mainly they are public space, maintenance and sanitation services. We also provide programmatic and community supports for the Essex market. And that includes programming and food and nutrition supports for residents of the Lower East Side, specifically targeted at low and moderate income residents. We also do a variety of programming, marketing, and things that highlight the businesses and opportunities in the neighborhood to enjoy the Lower East Side. So that's just the general overview of what we do. With respect to number two, I would say that increasingly, and I think this is a challenge across many bids, everyone is different for every different neighborhood, but sanitation services and keeping up with the public realm and dealing with the intersection of what would be considered public safety and other concerns has been very, very challenging. And so we have not lost the ability to provide those services. But what I will say is the normal ability that we had pre-pandemic and even during the pandemic is becoming increasingly more stressed. It's just becoming more difficult to kind of be reactive in the moment. And so our recovery times are a little bit longer and the investments that we need to make into personnel and equipment are growing just so that we can keep up with what are the conditions on the street. With respect to number three, we do receive programmatic funding. We have in the past, typically it's council discretionary funding that our organization has received based through initiatives. We also have separate contracts with the New York City New York City Economic Development Corporation with respect to our work at the Essex Street Market. Number four, we measure impact in a couple different ways. On the programming side, when we're talking about low and moderate income programming, food supports, and all those efforts, those are typically measured through attendance and surveys and annual impact reports. The rest of our work, when it comes to sanitation and public space, we're measuring that impact through metrics. And so we're really looking at number of trash bags removed, instances of graffiti removed, when we're reporting illegal dumping, how we're mitigating public space, how many times in a day we're, really kind of putting back a barricade or changing a planter. That's how we kind of measure what those impacts are there. Services, programs you'd like to offer that you cannot presently afford. I think that we would love to enhance cleaning and public space services beyond what we are planning to do in the next fiscal year. Unfortunately, again, those budgets are a little bit tight. If we had more flexible dollars, we'd love to really kind of have more opportunities to fund and support public art installations that deter illegal graffiti throughout the community. We had a good amount of success with the 100 Gates program, but the funding and the upkeep for that is significant just because you have to kind of not only put in the art, but make sure that you have dollars available to maintain that when it does and if it does get tagged. And then with respect to number six, yes, we do have future plans to expand or change. We're continue to be grateful of the community board support for an expansion of services that they had, that this committee had requested via a resolution. Clearly, there are pieces to that puzzle that we're still working through, but the goal is to really find a way to formally expand the district to the entirety of the service area and use really that opportunity to look at how we provide sanitation services and how we can increase our ability to do so with the potential addition of mechanized equipment and other things that can help us maintain assets throughout the community, whether those are planters, light poles, et cetera. Taking that next step and working in partnership with our agency partners, Department of Sanitation. So that's really kind of where we're looking towards the future. I think that what we're doing right now is stepping into organizational change. We're about to open new operational space for our sanitation and public space maintenance services. And so we're getting that kind of footed on the ground and a good foundation. And then really kind of looking at the future growth and the potential for an expansion of services and the defined service area. We are fortunate to have prior discretionary support that allowed us to provide some services outside our specific boundaries, what we call our service area. But unfortunately, those funds don't last forever. So we really kind of need to look to sustaining those funds via an assessment to provide those services in the long term. Sorry if that was a quick elevator, but I think I got through all 6 and happy to send them writing if needed.
Thank you. Board members, old and new, does anybody have a question or comment for Mr. Laughlin? Okay, Tim, is the board still is the community board still represented on your board? Is Megan still an active participant in your activities?
Yep. So Megan Joy continues to be an officer, and the chair of the board has always served as a representative. And I know that has changed, I believe, recently. So we'll have to make sure that we have that connection to the community board. We are always happy to have a representative that you folks would determine.
I've lost track of things over time. Sorry. I'm happy to hear that the bid has taken on a function concerning food for people in need. How long has this been going on?
So our programming at Essex started, I believe, in 2015, and it greatly expanded as we moved to the new facility. The biggest program that we have started in 2018 called Fresh Bites. And so Fresh Bites is a nutrition and cooking class that has a SNAP matching benefit. And so participants can come to the class for no charge. Ingredients are purchased from market vendors. The goal of the class is to cook not only in a nutritious way, but doing so with thrift. It kind of harks back to the LaGuardia era classes when the market first opens, like called Cooking with Thrift, to try to kind of make your grocery good go farther. But we provide each participant after the class where they've learned to make a meal and learned about the ingredients with a coupon where they can match their SNAP benefits at a market vendor. And so we've had a variety of programs. We offer them in Spanish, and Chinese languages. Right now, the Chinese language classes are a little bit more popular than our Spanish classes. It kind of goes back and forth, but we've been able to form some great partnerships with local nonprofits and all the area housing in and around Essex Crossing to really draw those folks in and make sure that the Essex market and the investment that the city made in Spur and Essex Crossing still continues to provide a community benefit. And that work is funded by NYC EDC, really kind of as part of that spirit of agreement with the community board and the development approvals to make sure that Essex Crossing in and of itself as a project had perpetual community benefits outside of housing. There were community benefits such as public space and programming that were available to all residents.
Great. Andrea? You need to unmute.
I hope I'm muted.
You're okay now.
Okay. Hi, Tim. Thanks for making the time. I hope I'm not digressing too much, but I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about your obstacles to expansion of services. As you know, I work really close to Ludlow and Orchard Street, so I hear this all the time from community members and small business owners, that they could use this. Some as to like what are you like expanding your services?
So really, the expansion of services is a formal process, right? It's a legislative process, and it's kind of multi-tiered. It requires amendments to a district plan. It requires a series of conversations about service delivery, and it requires, importantly, the submission of affidavits of support from property owners. And so,
want to be on video? That's it for me. Hello,
Okay.
hello. I've been.
Okay, that was Crystal. Crystal, I muted you because someone else was presenting.
Hi, Crystal. Sorry. Where was I? Obstacles. And so
It's a formal, yes, legislative
Yeah,
process. Go ahead.
The short answer is, we are trying to baseline just general costs and really what the personnel needs are to provide those services in a different way. And we are, still continuing the process of really kind of engaging property owners and merchants and saying to them, here's the pieces of a puzzle. We've been doing a lot of kind of background outreach, but the goal is in the new fiscal year to kind of formally step that up and say, great, we've heard from a bunch of different folks about what exactly it is that they want to see. We believe that this district plan and these services kind of meet those needs. And now we're asking if you would support that. So there's also been just to be honest, some transitions obviously in city government, and especially the neighborhood development division, all those kind of people need to be aligned, but we're hoping the new fiscal year brings that opportunity now that things have kind of settled down with some of those transitions.
Thank you.
Does that answer the question? Sorry if that was a roundabout way of answering it, but it's really process-based and personnel-based.
Quick follow-up question.
Sure, Andrea.
Just curious, you had mentioned, I'm trying to identify, needs of
You're muted again, Andrea.
technical thing. Can you all hear me?
No,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
The Wi-Fi situation is very bizarre. I just wanted to follow up about you had mentioned a number of things that are focused around the needs of businesses. Is there anything that is the needs of like job seekers? You'd spoken a lot about trash bags and the sanitation, planters, public space. Is there something as a board that we're missing in terms of needs of job seekers, that sort of thing?
Yeah, listen, I think that we, there are definitely, it's an interesting mix of people who are working in the Lower East Side, right? I think that what we have seen from a small business perspective, we're experiencing ourselves is just, the market for labor is changing. And so you have to be competitive, not only in price point, but in offerings. And that has been a challenge for us, especially as it relates to kind of sanitation services and turnover. And so one of the things that just we're doing from a job seeking perspective is really kind of looking at investments in the future and really trying to baseline our wages for our sanitation service personnel in an appropriate way. So really saying, here's what constitutes a living wage, here's what constitutes a benefit, and here's what constitutes, a work environment that is difficult at times, right? And so I think that will continue to be a challenge. We're really trying to work through it. Again, just from a financing perspective, the operation space that we're opening up is a big piece of that puzzle, just because, it has locker rooms, it has bathrooms, it has all those things that you would expect that frankly have not always been able to be provided. But I would say that, that experience of really kind of finding and retaining quality candidates that are, taking jobs or taking interviews and coming back has been challenging for us and has been challenging for small businesses. And really, it's just a different environment out there. So that continues to be, I think, from just an economic development perspective, retaining quality staff and making sure that you can afford to pay a wage that people aren't going to turn over very quickly.
Susan?
So this is sort of the same thing Andrea is saying, but a different way of asking, I think. So if you had a pot of money given to you, what would be your priority to spend it on? Extra money that you don't have budgeted?
I would spend it on sanitation services and personnel.
More personnel for the bid.
Yeah, well, more personnel for our street cleaning activities, right?
Okay.
And so, but I think it's important too to just recognize that, what I said about a competitive labor market and a living wage, those are all important things, right? So if there was funding available for us to kind of support and invest in our sanitation services and our personnel, that is exactly where we would put that money.
And how do you coordinate or work with, I don't remember the group, but that group that is funded for cleaning? It's a nonprofit.
The Doe Fund?
No,
The
it is,
Doe Fund? No.
no, it isn't a Doe Fund, I think it's another, and I'm thinking there should be, maybe it is the Doe Fund. I know the council member funds them to do streets in Lower East Side.
Yeah, so we have our kind of service area, and then there are areas adjacent to that the council member funds specific services for. I think in some ways they nicely mesh and overlap. ACE, Andrea, is I'm seeing the thing. It is ACE. Thank you. I know it wasn't the Doe Fund, but those services really kind of augment not only what bids are doing, but what the Department of Sanitation is doing. I wouldn't say there's a direct level of operational coordination, but just a recognition of general areas of provision of services.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. Susan, who was, I'm looking
think,
to the point to the next person.
Andrea reminded us that we didn't take attendance.
Oh, as we were going through the new members, I sort of lost track of that. Okay. Andrea, please call the attendance.
Give me a minute. It looks like I just got internet back, so
Wow.
So let me pull that.
Can you, okay, hear you again.
I just don't have
Okay.
You don't have,
Andrea, you could hear us. Perhaps if I could ask Susan if she could call the attendance then?
sure, I'll call the attendance. Richard Ropiak,
Here.
Megan Joy. I think she's absent. Alistair, I believe, is absent. Andrea? Here,
I see her.
she's saying, Herman, I believe is not here. Rodney Washington, I believe is not here, and Andrew Comey, I believe, is here. Andrew?
Yes, he is.
I'm here. The other thing is, I thought we were supposed to review and approve the minutes, but I don't recall getting a copy.
So, yeah, we've had acting chairs and unfortunately lack of consistency in the chair. So Andrea also mentioned that. I think we'd have to save that for the next time.
It's fine. No problem.
Okay.
Thanks, Andrew.
And so two more members, Thomas Rosa and Crystal Field. Crystal, I believe is here. You're good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't know who wants to, which bid would like to go next.
Evima.
Vima, the Merchant Association. There you go. But Abigail has the questions.
Yeah, I can get us started, and then I'm joined with Jimmy and Charles, who are leaders in Avima, who can, we have more of a team to talk about these things. So hi everyone, if you don't know me already, my name is Abigail Ellman. I work with Cooper Square Committee, which is a community organization that's been around for over 60 years. We work to preserve and develop affordable housing and organize commercial as well as residential tenants, among other things. I'll be talking mostly about our small business organizing work for this, for the purposes of this committee meeting. So we engage primarily with independent small businesses in the East Village, Lower East Side, and the Lower East Side. And we have a particular focus on small businesses owned by immigrants, women, members of the BIPOC, LGBTQ community, residents of the neighborhoods. And we've worked closely with the East Village Independent Merchant Association, or AVIMA, since its founding. And we've had a much closer relationship since 2020. when we co-stewarded an Avenue NYC grant focused on the East Village. And since that, we've really been providing a lot of organizational and administrative support to the Merchant Association. So Avima has really carved out a niche in the last 10 years, but certainly in the last few years with the support of the Avenue NYC grant as a merchant-led group that shares information and resources, that acts as a support network for the small business community and fosters connection with the larger East Village community. And we do that through a number of different areas: merchant organizing and engagement, business support and retention, and commercial district marketing and promotion. So in terms of merchant organizing, that looks like every year engaging hundreds of unique businesses through merchant meetups, networking events, storefront canvassing. We measure our impact through the number of merchants we engage one-on-one, the number of merchants that attend meetups, the number of new dues-paying members we get. Business support and retention looks like hosting workshops, doing one-on-one counseling, referring businesses to services such as legal, financial, business counseling. And that also sort of we measure that through the number of referrals we make, or the number of businesses that receive services. And in terms of commercial district marketing and promotion, we plan neighborhood-wide events, marketing campaigns, and we measure impact based on the number of businesses that participate in those events and promotions, and also the number of sort of the reach of the campaigns in terms of views, likes, shares across digital platforms. So we continue to engage in all of these activities, although the Avenue NYC grant ended last fiscal year. And we do so at reduced capacity. In other words, we're organizing fewer merchant meetups, we're organizing fewer neighborhood-wide events. I did just want to say, just in terms of commercial district needs, I forwarded a report that we released last year and we presented to this committee last year, but to refresh the memory of, since a little bit of time has passed, and also there are new members of the committee, we forwarded that report in advance of this meeting. We did that in collaboration with EVCC and Village Preservation. And you can find sort of like the findings at that point of what the needs were based on an inventory of storefronts and also merchant surveys, which we conducted. And I would just say a year later, the need is still there for enhanced support for community-based commercial revitalization programs. So things like merchant organizing, business support, public space activation, district marketing, all still very much needed, as well as for the community-based organizations that provide those kinds of support. And in particular, we find our members really, really value the commercial lease assistance program, which is funded through SBS, as well as the merchant organizing strategic impact grants, also funded through SBS. And we receive support both from SBS and also discretionary funding through the council. I'll pass it to Jimmy to talk a little bit more about kind of what Avima's origins are and the value that it brings to the neighborhood. And Charles will wrap us up with a few more examples.
Susan?
I don't want to interrupt, but I think the internet's back. Do I dare turn off my mobile hotspot and see if it works?
No.
No?
Don't do it.
Co-host with you. That's my only suggestion.
Yes.
If you're the host, it might disconnect the meeting.
I'm going to make Andrea co-host.
That's a good idea.
Okay, hold your breath. It's off. Yay.
Modern technology.
Okay, we're back on the internet. I'm sorry. Forgive me, Jimmy.
So I guess I'll go, and Charles will go, and then that'll be a good time for the board to ask questions, I think. So Abigail is very thorough and really summed up everything that we've been doing. I just want to give a quick background on Avima. After Hurricane Sandy, and I remember hearing this from Susan and elected officials, there was a realization that there was no data, no connection to all the merchants in the East Village, in particular the small businesses, of which, there's over 600 stores. So there were some initial grants, and EVCC was involved. And in 2015, I became a founding board member of what Avima is now. And having been, the seeds were from that first disaster, Hurricane Sandy, but then the next disaster, the East Village gas explosion. I was Jimmy's number 43, so I was adjacent to it. It kind of put me and my business in the corner of 2nd Avenue and 7th Street, kind of in the spotlight. And that's really how I got involved. But at that time, again, the skeleton of what Avima was really did rally. All the elected officials, emergency services were all based around us on 2nd Avenue and 7th Street. And, that just kind of galvanized us to be an independent group. Again, in 2020, when the pandemic happened, we went to the next level where with things like Zoom and, some of the things we've had in place, we were able to grow our membership. And Charles is going to talk more about that experience. I just really wanted to say that, we were originated and funded based on the needs of when there's a disaster or some other, huge event, whether neighborhood or worldwide. And it showed that when you have those needs, the merchants come together. But in 2020, because we had been organized, we had over 100 members join, and sometimes 50 to 100 regularly meet on our monthly Zooms, which was unprecedented. So all the experts, all the support were able to communicate with us. And what I'm trying to say is that now our funding's is less than it was because the Avenue NYC grants are over, but we still have the same need. In fact, now we have more members than we did before the pandemic. We've got great partners in Cooper Square Committee and Abigail. But, at this point, we're really hoping to get our funding back to what it was or close to it. I believe it was $100,000 for the Avenue NYC, and I think we're down to less than half of that. And some of that is directly from Councilmember Rivera, others from different things that Cooper Square has pieced together. So I just wanted to say that the next disaster will come, because it obviously does, but it's also the everyday things. The commercial lease assistance program is one program that brought us together with Cooper Square. And if you really care about small businesses, new businesses, businesses for community members, one of the first thing that they get screwed on is that they often don't have advice, and they may sign a lease without an attorney. And the commercial lease assistance program is that basic intro for legal, whether you need someone to review a lease, to comment on a lease, or usually more often to renew a lease. Very often, small mom and pop businesses, of which I am, are usually under the gun. And that's just one example of a way that we're working together with our merchants and with Cooper Square on direct services for small businesses that are indie, 1 or 2 stores. And we're from 3rd Avenue all the way to Avenue D now. But I think that we just are in place, and we need more support. With the limited funds we've done so much. I mean, our Avima Instagram and social media is run mostly by members and with some interns who do need supervision. We have over 6,000 followers now. And, just comparing it to 2015, when the East Village gas explosion happened, to now, wow, we really do have a solid merchant group. We have great connections. We're not freaking out of how do we reach the health department like Susan knows I had to go through years ago. We've got much better connections with all the city agencies and with the elected officials. Carlina Rivera's office does talk to us every year, and if we ever need anything, she's available. So I just wanted to say, we just wanted to represent that we are here. We're still, our heart's beating, and we're alive. And Charles will tell you a little more about some of the specific programs. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks, Abigail. Yeah, I just want to, I guess, take a moment to second everything that Jimmy said about Avima's growth. I do believe that Avima has made a difference in this neighborhood. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but the pandemic came at a good time because we were funded during that period. And Avima was really able to carve out this path to recovery for our merchants. And we did it consistently, and we did it all within city guidelines, and we did it regularly. And I'm proud to say that there were merchants on our calls that were from outside of our area because I believe they trusted what we were doing. We had really close, we were really close to the pulse of the small business community here in the East Village. And we want to be able to continue that. We have people ready and willing and able to do it. The Avenue grant has ended, unfortunately. And I'll be honest with you, I'm just a little concerned or worried for Avima's ability to maintain what we've been doing all these years. It just, unfortunately, it just takes funding. And we want to continue to do it. And, all of this has already been said to the mayor. I spoke to the mayor just a couple of weeks ago when he was here in the East Village. And so he's heard these words come out of my mouth that we just need funding to continue what we're doing.
Thank you. Thank the three of you. Do any board members have questions for either Abigail, Charles, or Jimmy? Susan.
So what is the path to funding? Because when you're a bid, there's an assessment to property owners, and it appears that you're not looking to go in that direction, and you've been successful in the kind of organization that you are. But what would be a path to funding? To have stable funding, because you don't have like the kind of city contracts that bids have. You don't have the assessment. So I don't know, how do merchant organizations get money other than the year-to-year grants and discretionary funds, which is not dependable?
I think Abigail's probably the best to answer that.
Yeah, I think the sort of conventional wisdom is that it's not a financially sustainable model, and merchant associations are strongly encouraged to form bids. The only issue with that in the East Village is such a huge area, just really wouldn't be practical to have a bid that covers the whole area where Avima operates. And so I think that it's a matter of being creative. And I will say that the city has invested this fiscal year in the strategic impact grants for merchant organizing. They funded 7 groups that I'm aware of. Like, we've been meeting in a convening kind of format and exchanging knowledge. And some of the groups are just starting merchant associations. Some of them are more established, like Avima. But I think that's a very worthwhile investment. It's not very much money from the city's, SBS budget. It doesn't by any means cover all. It doesn't sort of meet the needs of Avima to do all the things that Avima has the ambitions to do or has the needs to do. So then it needs to be supplemented with discretionary funding, probably some earned income through like events or fundraisers or things like that. I think it's more of a process of piecing together a few different things rather than having an assessment and then supplementing it. And also merchant dues, also other sort of smaller donations and things like that. But I think that is sort of the path to get to funding. It's more of a piecing together through some SBS funding and some discretionary funding, fundraisers, events, sponsorships, dues. And what we really need is for SBS to issue like more reliable, sustained RFPs for merchant organizing year over year. So it's not always a question of we have this grant now and then it ends and then we have to sort of pick it up and patch together later.
That's still true. If they issue RFPs, though, you still don't know from year to year.
Multi-year funded, merchant organizing grants might be useful. And it seems like kind of a waste to fund something like this for a year or 6 months, because it's very deep relational work. You might spend 6 months doing canvassing and building the base, and then the rug gets pulled out from under you. You know, there's a lot of value that's lost. So that's what we're, you know, in consultation with the Avima membership, that's what we're advocating for. Just additional strategic impact grants.
Let me ask 2 more questions. So the funding to pay you, is that 100% Cooper Square, or does some of that come from other, you know, Avima funds?
Small amount of, it's not really for personnel, but for some small incidental costs, the membership dues can cover it, and Avima did receive some donations in the past year.
But does any of that?
The lion's share is Cooper Square fundraising.
But that goes toward your salary?
It goes towards our programs staff.
So it's not, I mean, I'm differentiating between salary and stuff for programs and other than personal services. So it sounds like you're totally supported by Cooper Square Committee, which is, you know, for this kind of work, as well as other work. Okay, my other question I wanted to, maybe Jimmy wanted to, it's on the commercial lease help. I've always found it kind of problematic because people often don't know that the help is available and that they need it until they're in trouble. do you, I mean, seriously, do you see like merchants and, you know, first time lease holders, you know, or signers, do you actually see them knowing to take advantage of that the first time around?
I think that Charles can talk more about that because he's had to deal with it. But I do remember that we have had, when we've been funded and running properly, we've hosted workshops to introduce merchants to the commercial lease assistance program. And again, Abigail's really been the glue to connecting that. You know, even regularly, one of the things we have, everything about us that works are very basic, but it's based on the relationship. So we have a Google email for members, and you know, often the questions are anything from who can, you know, fix my broken glass to I need help looking through a lease. And then if lease comes up, we usually refer to Abigail. Unfortunately, on that note, seems like more of the group chat is dedicated to, you know, disturbed people coming into the stores, which seems to be a whole nother thing, which we're not bringing up right now. There was one store on 14th Street that had a gun issue at gunpoint last week. And these are all come on the chat, so we also see that. But so our community is dealing with everything that a small business has to deal with on a regular basis. And the good thing is that there's usually someone there for the others. Often a lot of the work's being done by merchants, and you know, especially like the Instagram and other promotions. And you know, just we have the opportunity to bring in interns, and Abigail can manage them. But again, you need to manage an intern. So we could have more interns, but we also need some staff that can really manage them so they have the right experience. So I think we're really at a point where we can say, you know, yes, with the support and working with Cooper Square Committee, we are a real community-based merchant organization. We're probably a new model for what's been in the past. And I think there's a need for that, you know, and we're not really meant to be in bed with the landlords, because often the biggest issue that we have are leases and issues with the landlords. And not that we're against them, it's just that our needs are very different from, you know, large landowners and large commercial tenants. So that's a good way to sum it up. So the commercial
Also,
lease
I'd just like to say
is geared towards supporting the small independent businesses in ways that there was never anything else for commercial assistance. You know, you couldn't go to legal aid as a business, you know.
I was curious specifically about the commercial lease program because it does seem like it's very valuable, but very hard to let people know about it before they need it. Charles, did you?
Yes,
say
Susan,
something?
it is pretty valuable. And I think it's a little bit of a catch-22, your question, because we only speak to people who are already merchants. So like you mentioned, like first time like we don't really speak to the people who aren't part of our group already. It would be great if we could. I would love to speak to people before they decide to come into the neighborhood. But our current members definitely hear about the CLA program on every single Zoom that we do.
But they already have signed leases.
By then they would have already signed leases. Yeah. Do we even have people come to the Zoom, Abigail, who are not already
Actually, we
merchants?
do have some people participating in Avima who do not have a commercial space, do not have a brick and mortar space. They are e-commerce businesses or their home businesses.
Okay.
So they could, I mean, I think the barrier to them opening a business in the neighborhood is less about being aware of the commercial lease assistance program and myriad other barriers to opening a new space, including high cost of commercial rent.
So if they're tuned into our messaging, then they're getting the message that there's a CLA program.
One thing that the board did a while back, and I don't know if it was only once or more than once, I don't recall, was that we had a connection with the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce, and we had the woman who was the head of it at the time, I don't know if she still is, to speak with us about it. I don't know if the bids or anybody wants to go in that direction, but just be aware that it exists and there might be a possibility of linkage that the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce can provide. So just information for you.
Now, SBS, provides the free service.
Okay. All right. Thank all of the three of you for that. I'm sorry. Are there any questions by board members? Okay.
Yeah, I have my hand up. I'm not sure why you all can't see it, but it's up.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew.
Hi, Richard. I actually wanted to give Laura Sewell an opportunity to ask a question or chime in. She's on the call.
Oh, sure. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Richard. Thank you very much. I apologize for not being on camera. I'm at a garden meeting. I really appreciate what the others have said and 100% agree. I think what we're looking for is for SBS, if the board would encourage SBS to issue more RFPs directed at the community organizations who are already providing these services, whether it be Cooper Square, who is doing a wonderful job with the commercial lease assistance program before even they took on Avima, or EVCC, who's been doing storefront surveys, counts, dating back to 2010 with you guys. We're doing this work and we're not being compensated. It's coming at the cost of our boards and our fundraising, that for all of our labor. And I'm sure that goes for Vaughn at Village Preservation as well. So if the community board could encourage SBS to issue more RFPs for the services that are needed to the organizations that are already providing them, I think that would be super beneficial. We work with SBS. We've worked with SBS obviously to form Avima, and after that we've partnered with them for some grants that were for areas on commercial corridors around the open street. But that's done, and we are looking for the next opportunity, and this year it's not here. So we're not going to give up and turn our backs on our work and the merchants we've been serving. And that number is more like 1,500 than 600. It is an enormous territory, which is why it requires 3 organizations to take care of it. But that's my plea. Whether it be RFPs for district marketing or for the commercial lease program, which, as Susan said, I know what you mean, Susan, but I still have people who use up that program to renegotiate leases during the pandemic, to negotiate deals during the pandemic. And I have people who negotiated deals without assistance during the pandemic, who I'm calling the third wave. because they are now getting hit with demands for back rent if they want to continue in their place. And these are smart business people who own 5 stores. It's very frustrating. So the need is great, and whatever you can do on our behalf would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Laura. I guess that brings us to Village Alliance, Susan.
Yep, Taylor's
Yep, Taylor and Scott are here.
Hi, Taylor and Scott.
I'm happy to go, Taylor, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, I'll chime in.
Sure. So I'm Scott Hobbs. I'm the executive director of the Village Alliance. I've been with the organization not even a year yet, so I'm relatively new. But to go through some of these questions, I'll just go line by line. What kind of service does your organization supply? We're very similar to Lower East Side Partnership, only we don't have the Essex market. So our focus is really on supplemental sanitation and public safety, which takes up probably about 75% of our budget. And then we also work on business attraction and retention.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Scott. Could you do me a favor and refresh my recollection? The boundaries for the Village Alliance are what currently?
Sure. So we run on the main spine of the district is 8th Street, which also becomes St. Mark's, from 6th Avenue to 3rd Avenue, and or sorry, 2nd Avenue. And then we manage Astor Place Plaza, and then we go up University from 8th Street to 13th Street, and then we do 6th Avenue from 13th Street down to West 4th. So the bit of our district that is in CB2 is really the St. Mark's portion of our district.
CB3.
Yep, CB3.
I'm sorry. I'm out of sorts tonight, as you can tell. Yeah, so you asked whether we've lost the ability to provide any services. I would say, and this is not really a concern with the section that is in your community board, but we've had a huge spike in quality of life issues for the portion of our district that's closest to Washington Square Park, and it has really strained our ability to attract and retain businesses in the neighborhood. I think that's one of the biggest impacts that we've had. In terms of programmatic funding, we don't currently receive any specific programmatic funding outside of our existing assessment funds with the City of New York and our property owners. And we measure our impact in the community by both the amount of trash and graffiti that we remove every month, but also in a reduction of our vacant spaces, and then number of participants in some of our retail programs, like we have the Village Access Program, which is the discount program available to residents in the neighborhood, and we have an app, and we can measure how many people downloaded or are using those discounts at any given time. In terms of services that we would like to offer that we cannot afford to provide, honestly, this is all kind of tagging back to the quality of life issues. I wish we had the ability to fund outreach for substance abuse and addiction to those living along the commercial corridor. This has been a huge problem and a huge disruption to a lot of the businesses. We have a lot of businesses along our corridors that have hired their own private security, given the increase, and a lot of our businesses cannot afford to do so just because the needs are so great. And then the last question was if we had any future plans to expand or change. We don't currently have any plans to expand, but we have a rise in cost associated with our service contracts with inflation, and then the upcoming increase that's coming again to the minimum wage at the state level. So our board, just to be fully transparent, has asked us to look into expanding our district boundaries only to moderate the increases to provide these services. But there's nothing out there yet where there's no real plans right now, but that is something I've been asked to explore.
Okay, thank you. I've been involved with the board for a while, and the community board for a while, and I've been always sort of curious about the Village Alliance and wondering if it ever extended to 2nd Avenue, 1st Avenue, Avenue A. It seems like a logical extension of the flow through.
We haven't looked at that yet. I mean, this is the expansion was a relatively new thing to asking us to explore. Honestly, I know that my predecessor, when they were forming the West Village bid, was looking into that as well. It really amounts to whether the amount we can raise in the assessment will cover providing services to the neighborhood. At the time when we were asked to expand west, I know that the numbers did not make sense for the organization. I'd have to look into that in greater detail. I mean, if it makes sense, we would love to, but it really just comes down. Yeah.
I'm not trying to be a rabble rouser, but between Avima and Village Alliance, either of you two organizations seem, the blocks between 3rd Avenue and Avenue A on 8th Street, St. Mark's, whichever you want to call it, are really very retail business oriented blocks. And I don't know what that says about potential assessment funds, if anything like that was to occur. But from the community board perspective, one of the difficult blocks over the decades has been St. Mark's. And from a liquor license perspective, there are others that have popped up since then, but that was one of the leading areas with those issues. And it always seemed like it could use an organization in charge of something on those blocks. And, just a thought on my part. That nothing more than that. And do any board members have any questions for either Scott or Taylor? Taylor, do you have anything that you would like to add?
No, I mean, Scott hit the main things, I would say. I mean, some of the other, ideas that we kick around are, we've got Astor Place and we've got Ruth Wittenberg Triangle on the west side. We'd love to have funding, to seed a public art, kind of grant program that we could help pay artists. Because right now, I think anytime we do that, it's few and far between. And, there are significant costs with installing public art. So that's something we would like to do, but as Scott said, we're spending the vast majority of our time, mental resources and everything else dealing with quality of life issues.
Oh, so when are you guys going to put the queue back?
Late July.
We didn't take it, to be fair, but yeah, no, but it will be in mid to late July. Yeah.
Okay, great. Susan?
I don't want to discuss it now, but Scott does come to my district service cabinet meetings, and we should talk about those quality of life issues at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Am I missing anybody else from the bid, Susan?
I don't think so. We had Village Alliance. Chinatown bid was supposed to come. They did not come.
Okay. And for those of you, for all of you, my first job on the community board a long time ago was a representative from the community board to the then forming 14th Street, what eventually became the 14th Street bid. I was the board representative to that. And it was fascinating to watch how they evolved from a 14th Street organization to becoming the Union Square bid, et cetera, et cetera. Their boundaries, I don't know if it still exists, but because they had two separate organizations, the original founding organization that I can't recall the name right now, and then eventually what became the bid. But the boundary of the original organization went down 14th Street. I forget how far west it went, but it went down 14th Street to Avenue A, Avenue B, somewhere down there. They've never really done much that I'm aware of between 4th Avenue and the blocks east, but they are an existing organization, and somewhere along the line, if possible, I would like to encourage them to join our little group of bids Community Board 3 Lower East Side bids. I think they should be encouraged to add a little bit of perspective. Of course, for those of you who've gone along 14th Street, it's also a retail business block or blocks on both the north side and the south side. Yes, it has changed over the years, but it's there. And please be aware of it, and let's see what happens with them in the future. Community board members, are there any other topics that you would like us to raise with the folks representing the bids? Any of the new board members? Michael, anything? Nothing?
No, sir, not at this time.
Today is a good learning experience for all.
Yeah.
It refreshes my recollection, and it's good to hear from all of the bids that we are alive and well, and hopefully prospering more than the last 3 years have allowed us to do. Susan?
I'd like to talk about next steps for the, with this information for the district needs statement.
Okay.
We generally try and finalize that in July if possible. I know it's been difficult because there's no permanent chair for either right now, either arts and culture or, or economic development. Last year, we did not have an economic development statement as part of the district needs. I assume, I don't know if it was whether there was a chair then or at that time or not. But do you want to have a meeting next month to try and put something together to vote on for economic development, and then budget priorities later would come out of that? I think we certainly heard some programmatic budget priorities.
Yes, I think that's a very good idea, Susan. Thank you for suggesting it. And for all of the participants in this meeting, we would appreciate your continued input into helping us dot the I's and cross the T's as to how we convince the community board that economic development is a big part of what the Lower East Side is. I'm sorry that Chinatown wasn't here today. Usually they participated fully in the past, but I think that,
they had another event, and I
Sure.
thought they had identified a different person to come other than Wellington, but I guess that didn't happen.
That's fine. We'll catch up to them. Yes, please schedule something for that. One last thing that I could think of, Andrew, you still on? I don't know if Andrew Comey is still on, but the board.
Yes, he is.
Okay, the community board.
I am, Richard. I just took me a bit to unmute.
Oh, you muted me. Ha. You mentioned that the last time we talked that you were interested in reviving the study that we had undertaken, or that we were trying to undertake. Could you please comment briefly on that?
Sure. No, I didn't want to undertake the study. We had passed the resolution, we had done all the work, and the next step in the process was some community board members felt we had not done sufficient outreach. So the next step in the process was to do more outreach. And at the time, I can't speak to it now, but both AVIMA and EBCC had discussed the possibility of doing more outreach with a focus on the merchants themselves. So I just want us to revive this special district and move forward with our plan.
The district that Andrew was commenting on essentially ran from 14th Street down to Houston, from, I forget, from 4th Avenue, from our boundary on the west side to, I don't remember how far east we went, Andrew. Did we go?
We went to D. We went to D.
Yeah, okay. And there might have been a little slippage south of Houston Street, but essentially, no. I know we looked at it, but I don't know what we decided to do with it, if anything. But Andrew's right. We had we did so many walking surveys and so many tours and so much analysis that it was driving us crazy. But it reached the point where the Department of City Planning and our local elected officials were the logical next steps in how to deal with a possible special district. And the goal of the special district was going to be, Andrew, what could you comment on the goals?
Sure. The goal of the special district is to enhance the ability of local small businesses with an emphasis on daytime retail to come to the East Village and thrive in the East Village and slow the encroachment of chains and the overwhelming emphasis on eating and drinking establishments. So that the special district would use some zoning mechanisms to try to promote those objectives. And as I said, the full board supported a resolution. We drew the boundaries, and Richard mentioned city planning and the elected officials. We had a preliminary conversation, at least, with both of those parties, and the committee felt that we needed to do, again, some additional outreach because we hadn't done anything since a town hall many years ago. But then the pandemic hit and we put a pause on it. And then when we started to meet again, that's when the community board restructuring occurred. So I think it's still a viable thing for the Economic Development Committee to spearhead. And as I said, I cannot speak for the two organizations that originally offered to do outreach to the larger group of merchants, but that was the next step.
For those who don't know, Andrew Comey is a public member of Community Board 3, unless his status has changed to board member.
No, I'm a public member, and in full disclosure, I'm also the treasurer of EVCC and a senior vice president at Housing Works.
Okay, Susan?
Well, first of all, I'm going to be a Debbie Downer. But then also, this isn't on the agenda, so maybe we shouldn't continue discussing it now.
Okay.
But my Debbie Downer is, we have two citywide text amendments coming up that I would urge everyone to pay attention to. The workshops for the next one will be starting soon. And I think the zoning initiatives that are going to do exact opposite of what the board is looking to do, unfortunately. I don't think it'll be bad for businesses necessarily, but I think as far as trying to use zoning restrictions to create certain balances, I think the opposite is happening, but that requires greater looking into. And I suggest that maybe when the next one will be coming up this fall, I believe, that maybe we can have a lot of the perspective of the work that's been done for a special district to look at the zoning text amendments.
Okay, thank you. Susan,
yeah, I wasn't suggesting we discuss it here. As you know,
no, I know that.
My request.
My bad, I brought it up.
No, that's fine, Richard. I'm glad you brought it up. I appreciate it, because my request is that this get calendared and put on an agenda of economic development, and we, go clearly through what we did, where we paused, and next steps should the board decide that we want to take those next steps.
I promised to bring it up at the exec last month, and I totally forgot.
Well, next time I see you at the farmer's market, Susan, I'm going to take your fish away from
you. Last agenda item. Susan, are we aware if anyone representing the Joyce Theater has joined us?
No, it doesn't look like they did.
Okay. Do I have to take, do we have to do roll call to conclude the meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so but for the new members, for Angel, Michael, Diane, and Emma, any questions, any comments, any perspective? speak now or forever hold your peace until the next meeting.
I don't have any at this time. I definitely have been writing some down. So next time for sure. I was just trying to listen to everything that was being said, but thank you for asking.
We encourage all four of you and others of your peers. If you want to consider joining the Economic Development Committee, you'll be very welcome. Okay, Susan,
Thank you.
You want me to call the roll again?
please.
Okay, Richard Ropiak,
Here.
Megan Joy. Absent Alistair Economakis. Absent Andrea Gordillo.
Yes.
Herman Hewitt,
Yes.
Rodney Washington. Absent Andrew Comey,
Present.
Thomas Rosa. Crystal Field. I guess we lost Crystal.
Okay. Okay, thank you all very much for attending the meeting and look forward to seeing you all in person next time. Thank you. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Susan.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Charles.
everyone. Have a nice evening.
Okay.